Diesel, Rashida, Mindscaping,
QTM, go!
Welcome to Queering the Message. We're not a podcast today. Today we're on video. I'm Izzy, she, they. I've got Eli, he or she, with me. Today we will be commentating round 3 of the top cut of East Coast Nats. This is the lower bracket. We have on our left paillu AM playing Freedom. This is an interesting Tag Me Freedom deck on God of War. It's a new deck out of QTM. Made its debut at this tournament and then showed up on the other side of the country at Cascadia the week after. On the right, we have analyzechris, a snare bear, playing PD. I know this PD is on YDL Big Deal, and it should be an exciting game.
Yeah, I really loved watching this game because I know both of these players very well. Chris has been like part of the New York meta for a while. He's like really chill, really cool. And of course Frogs is very nice. And I had gifted Frogs Pipe Cleaner Friend that day, and we joked that Pipe Cleaner Friend was on video more than Sokka for the top cut.
We've got click 1 red level clearance. Do you remember if the players mulliganed this game or kept?
Kept. I remember that. Yeah, because I don't know if I want to give anything away, but Frogs has a very important card in hand that I had seen and was like, oh man, this game.
Red level drawing 2, getting the click back. Another red level, draw 2. Presumably get that click back.
There's so much value in PD.
There's your first YDL.
Yeah, I mean, it's I believe, yeah, so this is similar to the Man in the Moon PD. The one major difference is the predictive planograms, which is kind of meaningful versus this Freedom in particular, since it does have tags.
Install, no discard. That's the power of PD, 6 cards in hand.
Also, that was turn 1.
8 credits, 2 installs, draw 4 cards. Seems normal.
Yeah.
Solidarity badge for Mentor coming down. These are 2 really important early installs. The Freedom really wants to get that early Solidarity badge cooking. Having that consistent card draw is really important. And Hot Pursuit. The tags are going to start flowing. Very important here to have the Fermenter too. Having something that ticks up virus counters is really going to enable Freedom to trash forward into the to get through that early game and set up.
Yeah, for sure.
I was off 5 cards in HQ, not 6. Touching that big deal, trashing it for money.
Yeah, I remember Chris made a joke trashing it for 17 virus counters.
Someday I will, but today is not that day.
But yeah, you could also just pay the money.
Hot Pursuit, very importantly, giving you the money before the access. One of my favorite econ cards in the game.
Yeah, I was playing it in Seb. It's so fun. It's kind of crack.
That's a luminal score.
Yeah.
That's what you want to see. What are we picking back up? Now, trashing that big deal is often very important, but of course in PD, they can just pick the big deal back up. So after that score, when Chris has that moment to try to go for a big deal, he can score and then pick the big deal back up. It's going to be YDL this time, though, of course. Not quite enough credits for that big deal. I see a second one in hand, though, so that's another difference from the Man in the Moon list.
Yeah. I mean, it's scoring the luminal, the first agenda for PD. I think the win rate goes up significantly just because you can just set up your next score very easily. And then it's if it's an Ikawa, then you're at 5 points and you're almost going to close the game.
Yeah, ending turn 2 with 2 points scored, installs, 5 credits. PD is feeling fairly happy here. Back to the Freedom,
but Freedom's
though.
Pretty set up. Yeah, Freedom's still pretty set up here. It may seem like not that many cards, but I think the Solidarity badge, of course, is really important. And then the Fermenter is one of the best Freedom cards you can have.
Absolutely, because of course we're not aiming at popping that fermenter early. We're aiming at spending those virus counters to trash cards that we normally couldn't get access to.
Exactly.
Devil Charm comes down. Important to note, this Freedom list is on Arwaceras crew Devil Charm in order to get through a lot of the ice, and then God of War as the only breaker.
Yeah. The Devil Charm comes in handy for pretty much every ice versus God of War.
Tattoo Bola, we've got a couple of options for trashing this if we want.
I think you do want to trash it though, because if you don't, and then so it's like they would, if you were able to break it, they would just get the value from it.
Absolutely. Now, do we Freedom Thrash for free here, or do we spend a real credit to be able to save that Freedom value? Seems like Freedom is the right choice here. Not really trying to make another run this turn. Taking down that Rashida was the most important thing.
Right. I think you don't need to be super aggressive at this point since Chris is only on 3 credits. I mean, that could change very quickly, but...
This board state really regressed for PD losing that piece of ice on the remote. We're suddenly in a place where we need to set up again before we can push.
Yeah, and pretty much at this point, if you get another crew down or even God of War, pretty much any piece of ice can get broken.
Absolutely. Checking the face down, it's your Spin Doctor. Nice foil Spin Doctor. I think those were from Intercons.
Yeah. Personally, that's the only kind of Spin Doctor altered I would ever have, because I don't see why you wouldn't want Malcolm Tucker on your Corp cards. But yeah, Chris making a big decision here, because if you score something, you can get it back to hand right away. But it's like with Spin Doctor, you're definitely going to use it here. It's just a question of what you would rather have in your deck versus in your hand.
Red level and big deal. Makes sense, expecting that second big deal that's already in hand, likely to get trashed at some point. Red level being such a useful card in these lists.
Right. Yeah, it's like your ice doesn't really do that much. Rashida's probably going to get trashed. It's got to be the red level and the big deal. The ice does something, just not as much as red level.
And God of War, I do believe, starts at 1 strength, and so that Tattoo Bola is not a piece of ice that would hold up into the late game.
Yeah. It can get you some money, but I think, you just rather have red level since it can do a lot.
Botulus coming down, another piece of ice technology, as well as another bank for your virus counters. Passing the turn
you've
back.
got 4 virus counters now. Slowly ticking your way up to 17.
A lot of cards in hand from PD from that Spin Doctor Res.
Yeah, which is not what you want PD to do, because just 1 YDL will bring you right back into the big deal. Close to the big deal range anyway.
And there
you have it. Yep.
I think that was a net of 5 credits if I counted right.
Yes.
Immediately over installing.
Yeah, I did that a lot when I had, unfortunately, I had to play against paillu in Swiss versus my Ob, and I ended up doing that a lot. Just getting rid of the ice that got botulised.
Yeah, it's tough, because the Botulus does get a ton of value, even if you never res the ice as a virus counter battery. At the same time, You're so taxed on ice, and this PD does probably have magnet in it. So there is often an argument to just spend the 1 more credit and keep it there, but with it being used as a Freedom virus bank, it's a lot harder to justify keeping that ice around.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense against Hoshiko, or maybe I don't know if you play Botulus in Arisana, but other non-Freedom Anarchs, it might make more sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
To keep it for a little. And I think that's another Botulus.
Sure is.
Oh, I love those alt arts.
They're great. Now, paillu here are using Kat Shen's tokens. Now, Katshen does make a set that are color matched to this Botulus alt.
Yeah.
Predictive Planogram, a spicy include. The influence was originally on Sudden Commandment in the Man in the Moon deck, switching it out for Predictive Planogram. Now, here I think Chris is missing that Freedom is tagged, and so he could get both modes of the Predictive. I'm not sure if he catches that.
Yeah. No, I don't think he did. I think he just drew and then forgot he could also take the money.
Truly.
I mean, the draw, yeah.
Truly, he could never have been expecting that Planogram would have both modes fire. It was not included to have both modes fire in this list.
Yeah. And it is optional, so there's no mistriggers there.
Yep. Another spin coming down.
I see one Midnight in hand. I think that just got trashed.
Yeah, we are not looking to score out of a remote at the moment, given that we don't have one.
No. Yeah, I mean, especially since the big deal and the 2 RLCs go back, you can probably assume that Chris is preparing for a fast advance score.
Absolutely. And it does make sense, too, to focus a little bit on slowing down. This PD deck is incredibly flexible in how slowly it plays the early game. And so looking at Freedom and saying Freedom's win condition is getting consistent access to centrals in order to trash my key pieces and say, okay, I'm going to slow down and focus on protecting those centrals. Makes a ton of sense as an approach to like bridging into the mid game.
Right. And I think Chris is definitely familiar with tag me archetypes and knows that like it's going to be a bit before any big plays come down because there's only 2 tags at the moment.
Draft a res. Spending those Botulus counters.
Was that 2 Botulus counters on there?
Yep. Installed last turn, picked up this morning.
Right. Leave using the Freedom ability to just trash for free.
That is, I believe, the third Spin Doctor. So I think there's 2 Spin Doctors in the bin, 1 Rue from game. Is that what happened?
Yeah, that was trash from hand. And I believe there's 1 already used.
Not that PD has as much need for recursion as some other identities. How do you deal with Flood? You just score the agendas.
Yeah. I don't know if we pointed out that that's the Alexis Spicer QTM fermenter alt-art.
We didn't, but it's so good.
Yeah. The Botulus, I believe, is also one of hers. But yeah, the fermenter is very adorable.
Worth pointing out that a Rogue Trading came down here. Rogue Trading is an interesting one-off in the Freedom deck, a little bit of an influence spend. The idea of it being really, you install and click it, you're tagged, but you're trying to time it. And you could probably only get away with this once a game. You're trying to time it so the corp doesn't have that click and 2 credits to trash it, so that you can empty it out on the next turn. So it ends up being this little bit of a pressure piece where like they go for a push and you're like, okay, you can do that, but I'm going to get 18 credits. And 3 tags, which I'm going to use as a resource.
It's basically like a souped up pad tap.
Crew coming back, running the remote.
Yeah, I think at this point you can be as aggressive against any remote.
Gatekeeper goes down just as easily to Devil Charm as everything else.
Yep. I think that's still a reasonable res.
Midnight.
Ooh.
We went for a push.
Yep.
It's often hard in these PD decks to decide when to go for a jam. I think it was a really justifiable jam on Chris's side, although I admit I read it as an upgrade, which I think was the goal.
Yeah, but I think at this point, paillu has, Freedom has the leverage to pretty much go after any remote that comes down. But it's possible that, Chris was just trying to get rid of the agendas out of his hand.
Absolutely. Now, with that requiring a crew to get in, like, it's not no cost to the runner. There's 3 crews in the deck, only 3 Devil Charm, and Devil Charm RFGs, so you can't labor rights that back.
Yeah. Chris looking through the bin, probably checking don't know what he would be checking. Maybe the number of crews.
Seems likely.
Because that is an important number, and I think that was probably somewhat of a calculated ice placement. Just because it's like, you know, you basically have to... Gatekeeper is one of those pieces of ice that you just don't want them to get that draw.
Absolutely.
So it's just not worth it.
New push and a new remote. Do we reckon this is another agenda? Seems like a reasonable follow-up. Push out the first midnight, expected to get stolen, follow up with the second push.
Mm-hmm. And there's no crew out at this point. I believe there's one botchless in the bin. So I think, yeah, again, that's a calculated guess on Chris's part about whether or not.
Oop, there's 2 more points out of hand.
Yeah, whether or not Freedom can get in that remote.
With 2 Ikawas left in the game, the runner is now on game point.
Yes.
Third botulus coming down.
Yep.
On the remote. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that could be an agenda. Maybe Chris was assuming the third botulus wasn't in hand, or there wasn't another crew or something.
Checking it with 1 virus counter. We get through some things here, but not everything.
Yeah, you definitely don't get through Brawn.
We sure do get through Ablative, though. We are at threat. We're getting that install. 1 click remaining to deal with the Ablative install.
Yeah, so I would probably get back Gatekeeper, maybe. But maybe there's something in hand.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't know if you really want the Gatekeeper on a central enough to be, like, worth Ablative installing it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the Spin Doctor might be worth it.
The Spin Doctor is really where I'm looking at. That other server clause on the Ablative does make this a lot more tough. We are over-installing HQ. I think that was a face-down piece of ice that had been discarded. I don't know if you saw what it was.
No, I don't think I did. That might have been discarded on an overdraw, so... Or that might have been the same ice that was on HQ. Oh, okay.
Oh, maybe it was the ice that was overinstalled.
So, yes.
You're right. There was an overdraw discard. I did not see if that was from those cards or from the overinstall.
Right. So that is a Manic Arm, I believe?
It is. It's a Cat Shen Altar, and I don't think it was rezzed, which is an interesting choice, choosing to stay on 7 credits instead of asking the runner to pay 5.
Yeah, I think probably, again, setting up for a big deal play.
Yeah, and with 5 counters on a Fermenter, the runner paying 5 is not that significant if you're not planning to purge on your next turn, which I would be hard-pressed to say Chris has the tempo to do here.
Yeah.
Ablative comes down. That's the last botulus out of the game.
Yeah.
We've
so
gone
at least
through
there's that.
8 pieces of ice trash now. Am I counting that right? 2 through 2 overinstall, or 3 overinstalls plus
3 overinstalls.
So 5 pieces of ice and then the 3 installed on the board.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty rough versus Freedom with all the botuli, but it's like you have both that you can get past the ice pretty easily, and then, of course, if you never res it, they can still use the counters.
Absolutely. Patchwork coming down. This is the console that was in the Freedom deck at East Coast Nats. Worth noting, Patrick was cut after this event. It was fine, but we ended up preferring a single copy of Hermes.
Yeah.
Patrick being used
Hermes
to pitch Steelskin to install Manuel. Manuel giving multi-access on R&D well tagged. As an additional cost to trash him, the corp has to trash a card from hand.
Yeah. Yeah, Manuel is really, really good. Just as like some bonus little central pressure. It sometimes might even close out the game. Like in this case, it could.
It is a gatekeeper on HQ. The gatekeeper is firing.
Yeah. Fortunately, no crew down to deal with it this time. Or the Devil Charm. You would need both of those. So aggressively checking centrals because, again, that Manuel access is pretty major at this point.
Yeah, Emmanuel works on both HQ and R&D.
Yep.
Checking R&D, it's a drafter. It's going to fire. We're going down to 1 credit. But drafter firing with YDL in the bin after a gatekeeper res does feel pretty justifiable. It's so much harder to face check into HB right now. I'm certainly not the first one to point this out, but gatekeeper YDL turns the game from you should face check every piece of HB ice on turn 1 to if you hit a gatekeeper, you can lose on turn 1. And
yeah. I believe this might be click 3? Or is it click 4?
I think it's click 4. I think click 3 was the HQ run. Yep, and Rashida's firing.
Yeah. Just unfortunate. Yeah, because it was Patchwork, Install Manuel, HQ, R&D. So yeah, that Rashida fire is huge.
Yeah, Gatekeeper, Rashida, YDL, it's hard to ask for a better economic recovery on the PD side here. That is a fistful of cards, gaining a clean 11 credits.
Yeah, I think often early game drafter is like not that big of a deal, but like late game when there's so much stuff in the bin, face checking a drafter can really be hard. There's
YDL
the
double seamless, scoring that off. Yeah, that's a PD tempo forward turn.
Yeah.
Let's see what we're picking back up here. Good chance it's that YDL to aim for the big deal play.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, sometimes drafter just does stuff like that. So, pretty unfortunate there, but, you know, it's like, you know, it's not unreasonable to check ice on R&D when you have a multi-access card just to see what's there, but sometimes it turns into these kinds of HB plays.
We're picking up red level clearance. We are threatening to big deal out as soon as next turn with 18 credits.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, that gatekeeper shouldn't be too hard to deal with if you're trying to maybe go after an agenda in HQ or go after the big deal. But that does require getting out God of War.
Yeah, this version of the deck does have 1 chisel, which does get you through the gatekeeper.
Yes, because you're out of the Botuluses. You do still have, I believe, 2 crews left. And then the 3 God of Wars.
Yep, plus your labor rights to reset a little bit.
Yep. I don't know if you can see a certain card clearly in Frog's hand, but again, I don't want to spoil the ending of this game. It felt very dramatic.
Now, one important thing about God of War, I've remembered what I was going to say. God of War doesn't have the ability to break ice on the turn it comes into play. Now, most times in Netrunner, you're trying to get value out of a card the turn it comes into play. And God of War, you can't do that with. And that's definitely one of probably the trickiest parts of piloting the Freedom is exactly when do you spend that click and 4 credits to install God of War, especially if you didn't hit off the price or gachapon.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, if you have like Devil Charm down, it's a little better, but yeah, it's still, you know, 4 credits isn't nothing for like a expensive icebreaker.
We're really taking a think here, which makes a lot of sense. With the corp set up with the ability to big deal out, really makes a lot of sense to think, can I win on this turn? Just not have to deal with it. Now, the corporation did pick up red level clearance. And when Chris picked up red level clearance, like that kind of tells me that he is looking for a piece to do it. If he had the big deal in the agenda, like there's not the need for the red level there. You can get like the YDL, you can get a piece of ice that has a little bit higher trash cost with freedom. You've got some other options there. Now, choosing the red level clearance and trying to signal that you don't have it when you do is certainly an option. Netrunner is really a game like that, but I would kind of be inclined to think that here, Chris doesn't have it.
And there is the counter surveillance. So this is probably this is the counter surveillance turn.
Of course, we can't break Drafter, but Drafter doesn't end the run. We could also sweep HQ here. It's an interesting choice if you really think the Corp has all the pieces.
Drafter can install a Managarm on R&D, though, so that would be problematic.
Yeah, but we're cracking that for Mentor. We can spend Managarm money.
Exactly.
Which is certainly what is going through Frog's head here as we counter surveillance R&D. That Drafter's going to fire.
Yeah, just notably that counter surveillance was the card I saw in their opening, and it was like, man, that's the card. I want to see it coming down.
Yeah, 5 tags here. Healthy number of accesses. There do not seem to be that many cards left in the deck. There are 2 Ikawas. We're picking up another RLC, and we are installing a Spin Doctor in the remote.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. Try to draw that Ikawa so that it's not there. Looks like we're drawing a red level clearance and a Greasing the Palm.
Yeah, and also just polluting R&D with cards that aren't agendas.
Absolutely. So important to do everything you can to improve the odds on this access here.
Again, very dramatic. I think counter surveillance is always a very dramatic card.
Having to pay the money when you access makes it feel so much more intense. And it's the Ikawa off the top. That's the game.
Yep. Oh man. Yeah, it's and it's also very funny when it's like, oh yeah, that's just the first card that's there. But yeah, I believe Chris would have had the money for the big deal next turn for the Ikawa if he drew it. So yeah, no, that was quite a game there.
Really showing off, I think, very well how PD is able to have these massive economic bursts that really power the deck through the game, really showing off how the Freedom is able to take opportunistic accesses to disrupt the early game to get into a position where in the mid game it can just threaten to close out at a moment's notice. Just really a great game played by both players. Really a pleasure to watch. Thank you so much, Eli, for joining me today.
Yeah, I love watching these games.
Well, you can find Querying the Message. We have a podcast. You can find it at queryingthemessage.net. We have a YouTube channel. You can find it here, I hope. And finally, you can find the rest of the Top Cut coverage. We are splitting it up between Querying the Message and Neon Static. So the next round will be out on the Neon Static YouTube channel. Go check them out. They've been making awesome content for the game. And we're so excited to be tossing these games back and forth with them.
Yeah, I believe the next round is Frogs again. So keep an eye out for that.
There is more Freedom coming. There is Moon Pool Sports coming.
Yeah.
Good things on the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
Bye, all.
See ya.
Hey everyone, it's your friendly neighborhood video editor here, Kato, with a couple of thank you shoutouts for the end of the video. Again, shoutouts to Neon Static for helping us out with this series and collaborating with us. About 95%, I would say, of the image callouts that you saw here were actually from Eric's editing, who helped us out immensely on this episode. I just went through, did some quick QA pass and added a few extra bits and bobs here and there. But for the most part, Eric really was the editor on this particular episode. Of course, as always, all of the graphics were designed by Eric over at Neon Static. So shoutouts so much. Thank you for sharing those with us. Wanted to, of course, again, thank Not Again for putting on East Coast Nationals, Yasingrin for judging during East Coast Nats. Shoutouts to Izzy and Eli for the commentary that you all heard today. And as Izzy mentioned, you'll see the next episode over on Neon Static's YouTube page. You can check out the playlist in the description for a link over to a playlist that includes all of the videos from this East Coast Nats Top Cut series. And we'll catch you all next time. Peace.